Alright, cushion crew, cozy up, because what I'm about to unroll on you tonight might genuinely be the messiest, filthiest, most audaciously unhinged 48 hours the internet has served us in a very long time, and I am not exaggerating a single syllable. We pour the whole pot in this room, we don't hide the leaves at the bottom, and if you thought Claressa Shields was already skating on the thinnest ice of her entire career, buckle in, because tonight the ice cracked, the water rushed up, and half the culture is watching her flail with a microphone in one hand and a manicure emergency in the other. Grab the cushion. Silence your phone. This one is going to leave a mark. Because here is what dropped on us in the last few hours, and I need you to sit with the weight of every single word. Geisha 305, yes, that Geisha 305, walked into the arena, cracked her knuckles, and delivered what may go down as the most surgical, most personal, most devastatingly specific takedown that Claressa Shields has ever caught in public. And I want to be very clear about the choice of the word specific, because Geisha didn't just talk about the music. Geisha didn't just talk about the boxing. Geisha went to a place that no diss track in recent memory has dared to go, and she went there with receipts, with rhythm, and with the kind of composure that made the whole thing land 10 times harder than any scream could have. So before we get 1 inch further, tap that thumb, drop the words, ring that bell, boost the room, and toss a tip if the spirit moves you, because we are unpacking every layer of this, and I am not skipping a single one. Let me set the table for anybody who has been off the internet for the last 24 hours. Claressa Shields, 2-time undisputed world champion, arguably the greatest women's boxer of her generation, and currently one of the loudest personalities in combat sports, dropped a new record. She's been leaning into this rap career for a while now, and this particular single was aimed like a missile at Alicia Baumgartner. Fine. That is what artists do. That is what fighters do. That is what a promotional cycle looks like. But the second the track hit the timeline, Geisha 305 didn't answer with a rebuttal about the music. Geisha 305 answered with a mirror. And in that mirror she held up something that Claressa Shields, apparently, forgot the internet has cameras for. The fingernails. Yeah. You heard me. The fingernails. Now, this is the split where we talk it through, because I need you to understand exactly what Geisha said and exactly why the whole internet cracked in half within an hour of it landing. Geisha looked at the promotional imagery from Claressa's new record, zoomed all the way in on the very same fist that Claressa has been shoving into people's faces for weeks, and made the observation that 500,000 people had been whispering but nobody had had the audacity to say out loud. That the nails looked like they had been through a war. That they looked like they had not seen a scrub brush since the last presidential election. That the hands attached to the queen of women's boxing looked, in Geisha's own framing, like they had gone through several rounds with a garbage bin before they ever went through a manicurist. And then Geisha delivered the line that has been screenshotted, printed on t-shirts, and turned into a ringtone within 24 hours, the line about how instead of rapping, Claressa needs to have several seats, because the fingernails have to match the beat. Several seats. Match the beat. That is not a bar. That is a haiku. That is a surgical strike. That is a woman who studied the film, found the seam in the armor, and drove the blade in slow. Rewind that beat with me for 1 second, because I want you to appreciate the craft. Geisha did not attack Claressa's boxing. She did not attack her belts. She did not attack her ring resume. She did not touch the one thing Claressa Shields cannot be disputed on. Instead, Geisha attacked the vanity, the packaging, the presentation, the polish, and she did it by pointing at something so small, so specific, so intimate that Claressa cannot unsee it in a mirror for the rest of the week. And then she doubled it. She said if those 5 fingernails ever ball up and swing at somebody, somebody's walking home with an infection case. She said the palms were probably as questionable as the tips. She said Papoose, the husband, the ghostwriter, the man who allegedly penned 95% of the record in question, Papoose has to be dirty too, because the leftover ninja is next to you. I want you to marinate on that for a second. Because Geisha didn't just clip Claressa. Geisha clipped the whole household in one exhale. And listen, this is the part where a certain kind of viewer starts to feel bad. This is the part where a certain kind of viewer says, that's too far, that's too personal, that's below the belt. And I hear you. I honestly do. But time teaches what nobody warns you about, and one of the lessons of the internet era is this: if you put a fist in somebody's face on camera, if you sell tickets on the promise that you are the meanest thing walking, if you invite the smoke, you cannot cry about the ash. Claressa Shields chose this frame. Claressa Shields has been running around like an action figure with the safety off. And Geisha 305 simply picked up the toy, turned it over, and read the fine print on the back. Now, this is the split where I have to ask you the first real question of the night, and I want it in the comments before you scroll another inch. Is Geisha 305 out of pocket, or is Geisha 305 the only woman in the whole culture with the guts to say what everybody has been thinking? Type it. Drop it. Don't be shy. Because the votes are running about 90-10 in Geisha's favor on every single timeline I've walked through tonight, and I want to see if this room breaks the same way. So, is Geisha the only voice in this? No. And this is where it gets interesting. Because there is another woman in this story that I need to introduce you to, and she is genuinely complicating everything. Her name is Key. She's a Detroit native. And Key came online in the middle of the storm and did something almost nobody expected: she defended Claressa's actual song. Not the fingernails. Not the persona. The song. Key said, and I'm paraphrasing so we stay in the pocket, that she loves the way Claressa turns negativity into art. That she thinks Claressa raps better than Sexy Red. That she'll be twisting, twerking, moving to the record, full stop. And Key was very direct about the fact that she doesn't even like Claressa as a person anymore. She had a bad experience with Claressa in real life. She spent hundreds of dollars on tickets. She showed up to be a fan. And Claressa, according to Key, walked right past her like she was furniture. But Key still gave Claressa her flowers on the music. Now here is the split, and this is the split that separates the grown-up commentary from the internet screeching. Can you dislike a person and still respect their craft? Can you be embarrassed by somebody's off-camera behavior and still bob your head to their song? I actually think Key is doing something rare here. She's separating the artist from the art, and she's doing it on video, and she's doing it in a culture that punishes nuance. So the second question of the night is this. Is Key on to something, or is Key running on delusion fumes? Because there is a very loud contingent of people out there saying that Claressa rapping better than Sexy Red is not a compliment, that is like being told you're the tallest person in a group of toddlers. Drop it in the comments. Let's see the split. And speaking of the record itself, I want to walk you through something Key said that I don't think enough people caught the first time. Key made the point that people at Claressa's own boxing events don't actually rock with Claressa the way they pretend to online. Key said she paid real money, showed up in real clothes, walked over to try to hand Claressa a real gift, and got treated like an inconvenience. And this is a woman who publicly still gives Claressa flowers on the craft. Imagine what the people who don't give Claressa flowers are saying behind closed doors. That story alone should be a wake-up call, because when your ride-or-dies start narrating on camera about how you moved past them at your own event, the ice under you isn't cracking. It's already broken. You are in the water. You just haven't looked down yet. Alright. Cushion crew. Take a breath. Because we have to pivot, and the pivot is a live grenade. Somebody on the timeline this week decided to declare, with a straight face, that Jay-Z is now a sex symbol. At 56. And I want you to understand that this is not a small statement. This is a tectonic shift in the internet consensus that has held for literally 25 years. Because for a quarter of a century, Jay-Z has been dragged, roasted, memed, compared to a camel, compared to somebody's auntie, compared to Dizzy Gillespie, compared to a velcroed afro, compared to salt peanuts. That is not me being cruel, that is me quoting the receipts. Jay-Z has been the internet's favorite punching bag for as long as most of you have been online. So how did we wake up on a random Tuesday and decide that HOV is now fine? Let me walk you through the theory. Because the theory is more interesting than the joke. Jay-Z showed up somewhere recently with a fresh haircut. Trimmed. Sharp. Confident. He had clearly been in the gym. The little dad pudge that the internet used to clown him for is gone. The arms are bigger than people remembered. He walked with weight, meaning he walked with intention, meaning he walked like a man who knows exactly what he's worth. And the timeline, the same timeline that used to draw him as a camel with a chain on, flipped overnight. Suddenly the comment sections are giving thirsty. Suddenly people are quoting his wife's own lyrics about how he back it up and pretending they always saw it. Suddenly the narrative is that he's aged well, that maturity looks good on him, that confidence is the real cologne. Now this is the split where I want to be honest with you, because I remember being younger and my mother used to tell me something that I didn't believe at the time. She said some men don't peak young. Some men are supposed to age into themselves. Some men get better at 45 than they ever were at 25. And I brushed it off, because at 20 you don't want to hear that. But now, looking at Jay-Z at 56 with the fresh cut and the tighter frame and the same wife who has been calmly telling us for 2 decades that he is the finest man alive, I have to sit with the possibility that my mother was right, and that a whole generation of us were rewriting the story of a man who was simply on a slower clock. Or, and I have to entertain this too, we are all just gaslighting ourselves in real time. Because I pulled up the receipts. I looked at the roasts. I watched a full compilation of comedians drawing Jay-Z as everything from a salty peanut to an ant with an unfortunate wig. That happened. That happened in public. That happened for years. And now the same rooms are pretending nobody ever said a word. That is not evolution, that is amnesia. So the third question of the night, and I want a hot answer, is this. Did Jay-Z genuinely level up into a sex symbol at 56, or is the internet doing what the internet always does and rewriting the past to protect its ego? Because, and here is a piece I want you to sit with, there is a version of this story that is actually about vanity, and vanity is a word we have to reclaim. For the longest time, if you cared about your appearance, if you kept your nails clean, if you moisturized your lips, if you stayed in shape, if you dressed like the day mattered, you got called vain. Vanity was treated like a moral failing. But look at what we are actually watching happen in real time in this very story. Claressa Shields, arguably the greatest fighter in the sport, is getting reduced to a punch line because she went to promote a record with fingernails that hadn't seen a brush. Jay-Z, one of the most powerful men in music, is getting called fine for the first time in his life because he decided to prioritize the gym and the fade. Presentation matters. Upkeep matters. Society treats you differently when you take care of yourself. That is not a cruel opinion. That is a measurable pattern. And the people telling you otherwise are usually the same people who don't want the mirror pointed at them. So no, a little vanity is not the enemy. A little vanity is the door that opens the room. The moment vanity becomes your only personality, that's when we have a problem. But keeping the tips clean, keeping the edges tight, keeping the arms toned, that is the receipt of self-respect. And I said what I said. Now, cushion crew. We are not done. Because Claressa Shields is not a person who lets a news cycle breathe. Claressa Shields is a person who runs into every news cycle with a fresh microphone. And in the middle of getting embalmed by Geisha 305 over the fingernails, in the middle of Key defending the song, in the middle of the whole timeline debating whether a fighter should be recording music the week of a title fight, Claressa hopped on a live and dropped a whole new pot of tea on herself. First, she confirmed the meet and greet in Atlanta at the Buckhead Gym. Free. Open to the public. Come get your picture, come get your autograph, come pretend you were always a fan. She said bring gifts, don't bring too many gifts, one small suitcase, keep it modest. And a viewer, bless the viewer, asked in the comments, is it free or is it not free? And Claressa said free, open to the public. Which sounds beautiful. Except we have receipts. Because Claressa Shields has said, out of her own mouth, on camera, that she charges $100 for an autograph. Because somebody once sold a pair of signed gloves for $3,500, and she decided she wanted a cut. That is a fair business decision. But if the meet and greet is free, open to the public, and the autograph costs $100, and the picture is going to cost you something too, then free is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Bring cash. That is my public service announcement of the night. Bring cash, and don't say Cushion Crew didn't warn you. Second, and this is the piece that is going to have the internet chewing for a week, Claressa announced who is walking her out to the ring on August 15th. And the answer she teased, the answer she winked at, the answer she absolutely knew would break the timeline, is Andre Dirrell. Her uncle. Her coach. Her, and I am picking these words carefully, very affectionate friend. Because there is a story here, and I have to walk you through it slowly, because I do not want to be accused of jumping to a conclusion. Jada the boxer went on record and stated that the man Claressa calls her uncle isn't actually her uncle. Jada also alleged that Claressa and Andre Dirrell have a history that is a whole lot more layered than a family tree. I cannot confirm that. I will not confirm that. But I can show you what is on camera, and what is on camera is doing a lot of talking. You have Andre Dirrell, while Papoose was not in the room, leaning in and kissing Claressa on the cheek. And I know some of you are already typing, that is a family kiss. I hear you. But you have been kissed on the cheek by family, and you have been kissed on the cheek by somebody who wanted to kiss you somewhere else. You know the difference. Your body knows the difference. And on that tape, Andre did not lean in with uncle energy. Andre leaned in like a man saying, I'll see you later, baby. And Claressa did not flinch, did not pivot, did not tilt away. She held the frame. She let it land. And then she looked at the camera like nothing had happened. Then we have Andre, again on tape, telling the internet that when Claressa was training with him, she was with a real man. He said it without flinching. He said it while everybody in the gym heard it. He said it as a direct shot at Papoose. And Papoose, publicly, took it. That is not a small thing. That is a man who wrote 95% of his wife's music being called, not a real man, by his wife's coach, and swallowing it. Then we have the moment during the recent live where Claressa is holding a piece of equipment, I'm keeping it clean, and Andre says on the audio, and I want you to hear this one twice, yeah, all muscle. And Claressa looks at him. She doesn't look at the camera. She looks at him. And rewind that beat with me, because if that is uncle energy, then somebody needs to hand me a whole new dictionary, because the one I've been using has different definitions for those words. Now I have to be fair. I am not calling anything a confirmation. I am reading you the tape. I am playing the receipts. And the receipts, as they stand right now, are painting a picture that Papoose either does not see, does not want to see, or has decided to see and stay quiet about. And there is a receipt on Papoose too, because Papoose famously punished Easy the Block captain for allegedly doing to him what Papoose is now allegedly getting done to him. Karma has a very long memory. And the internet, Cushion Crew, has an even longer one. So, and this is the fourth question of the night, and I want a full comments section on this one, is there something going on between Claressa Shields and Andre Dirrell, or is it strictly uncle and niece energy? I want the honest answer. Not the safe answer. The honest one. Now, let me pivot for a second, because in the middle of every one of these fires, there is a challenge going viral that I would be professionally irresponsible not to bring up. Saucy Santana dropped a record called, Quiet on the Creek. The dance involves bouncing your chest, moving your torso, letting the top half do the talking. It's a whole moment. It's on every single feed. And of course somebody in Claressa's live asked her, are you doing the challenge? And Claressa, I will give her credit for the self-awareness, said she cannot do the dance because she does not have the chest for it. She was honest about it. She laughed at herself. That is one of the few genuinely relatable moments she has offered the timeline in weeks. But here is where it gets thick, because Claressa's own trainer, Dirrell, is standing in the frame while she says it. He's not commenting. He's just there. And the entire live stream vibe between them, in that moment, felt more like a couple debating what to have for dinner than a coach and an athlete. I am not making an accusation. I am telling you what the tape shows. Now, the fight. Because underneath every one of these viral moments, there is an actual boxing match on August 15th in Atlanta, at State Farm Arena. Claressa Shields vs. Cynthia K. Scott. Two-time world champion versus two-time world champion. If Claressa wins, she becomes a 21-time world champion. 21. And I know that sounds like a wild number, but Claressa has been undisputed at 160 twice, undisputed at other weights, and she is walking back down to 160 with a chip on her shoulder because the internet, allegedly, bullied her into it. Her words, not mine. She has publicly blamed the fans for the stress of the weight cut, and she has publicly promised to beat her up, meaning her opponent, as a form of revenge for making her do the cut. Which is a diagnosis I will let you sit with. Because the correct response to being asked to fight at a certain weight is to fight at that weight. Not to blame the crowd. Not to promise to take it out on somebody who had nothing to do with the pressure. That is the kind of framing that is going to age badly, no matter how the fight goes. And here is the part that has half the internet raising an eyebrow. Claressa has already announced 2 parties on the night of the fight. 2. Before the fight has happened. Before a single punch has been thrown. Before we know who's walking out with the belt. Now, champions carry confidence. I respect confidence. But there is a very thin line between confidence and premature celebration, and Claressa Shields is walking that line in 5-inch heels. If she wins, the parties are legendary. If she loses, those same parties become a meme that follows her for the rest of the year. That's the gamble. And this is the part where I have to be fully transparent with you. There is a version of this story where Claressa is a genius playing 4D chess. She is generating a news cycle every 12 hours. She is trending on multiple platforms simultaneously. She is selling tickets in a division that historically struggles to sell tickets. She is making Alicia Baumgartner's name matter more than it has in years. From a business standpoint, she is winning. She has cracked the algorithm and she is riding it like a mechanical bull. But there is another version of this story, and this is the version the ride-or-dies don't want to hear. In that version, Claressa is a person who cannot sit still. In that version, every fresh controversy is a distraction from the fight. In that version, showing up to camp with a rap career, an alleged situation with the coach, a diss track from Geisha 305, a lukewarm defense from a former fan, and 2 pre-scheduled parties is not the resume of a woman ready to walk into a ring on August 15th and outbox a 2-time world champion. That is the resume of a woman throwing spaghetti at every wall in the building and hoping one strand sticks long enough for her to duck the actual assignment. Which is the real Claressa? I honestly don't know. And that's the loop I want to leave open, because I want you to sit with it too. Now, Cushion Crew, let me bring this back down to earth for a second, because there is a bigger conversation running under every single one of these stories, and I don't want you to miss it. Every one of tonight's fires, the fingernails, the diss track, the Jay-Z sex symbol debate, the vanity discussion, the alleged Andre situation, the meet and greet, the fight, every single one of them is really a conversation about presentation. About what you put out. About how you carry yourself. About whether the version of you that shows up online matches the version of you that shows up when the cameras die. Because Claressa Shields is finding out, in real time, that the fingernails matter. That the ghostwriting whispers matter. That who kisses you on the cheek in public matters. That the parties you plan before the fight matter. That the way you treat the fan who paid for 2 tickets and walked over to hand you a gift, that matters. All of it matters. Not because the internet is cruel, although sometimes it absolutely is. It matters because presentation is the only translator between who you actually are and how the world reads you. And when your presentation is chaotic, the world reads you as chaotic. When your presentation is polished, the world reads you as polished. Jay-Z got a fresh cut and the whole internet flipped its script on him inside 24 hours. Claressa Shields went out with rough tips and the whole internet turned her into a meme inside the same 24 hours. The lesson is not that the internet is fair. The lesson is that the internet is loud, and it responds to what you hand it. And that is where a lot of us, myself included, have to check ourselves. Because we have been trained to look down on the people who care about presentation. We have been trained to call them shallow, vain, materialistic. But watch how quickly we punish the people who don't care. Watch how fast the same rooms that mocked Jay-Z for years turned around and called him fine the second he leveled up his grooming. Watch how fast the same rooms that used to hype Claressa Shields turned into a coroner's office the second she stepped out with a manicure that was 2 weeks past due. This is not a fair system. This is not a kind system. But it is a real system. And pretending it isn't real is how you end up being the punchline instead of the person telling the joke. So, take the tip. Or don't. But at least look in the mirror before the internet does it for you. Because the internet's mirror doesn't have a filter, and it doesn't have a comments section that will lie to you to spare your feelings. Now, before we start wrapping this pot up, I want to bring you back into the room, because you are the reason this whole conversation matters. So let me stack the questions of the night one more time, and I want your honest, unfiltered, unbothered answers in the comments. Number 1, is Geisha 305 out of pocket for going at Claressa's fingernails, or did she say the quiet part out loud on behalf of the whole timeline? Number 2, is Key giving Claressa flowers on the music because the song genuinely goes, or is Key letting her personal fatigue with Claressa cloud a real read on trash? Number 3, did Jay-Z become a sex symbol overnight, or has he always been fine and we spent 20 years rewriting his face? Number 4, is anything actually happening between Claressa Shields and Dirrell, or is that strictly uncle energy that our dirty minds are misreading? Number 5, walkout prediction, who is walking Claressa Shields out on August 15th at State Farm Arena, and does she win, lose, or embarrass herself on the biggest night of her year? Drop every answer. Number them. I read every one of these comments, and the best ones get pinned. And one more piece before I let you go, because I want to leave you with something to actually think about after the phone goes dark. Every celebrity in this entire story, Claressa, Alicia, Papoose, Andre, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Cardi B, Saucy Santana, Sexy Red, Remy Ma, Geisha 305, Key, every single one of them is a stranger to you. They do not know your name. They will not send flowers if you get sick. They will not know your address if you move. They will not remember your birthday. That is not a criticism of them. That is the arithmetic of fame. But too many of us are burning real emotional currency on people who wouldn't cross the street to hand us a napkin. Root for who you want to root for. Bob your head to the songs. Buy the pay-per-view. Enjoy the show. But keep the ride or die energy for the people who would actually ride, and actually die, for you. That is the free tea of the night. Take it or leave it. It's yours. Alright, cushion crew. That's the pot poured. That is every leaf, every drop, every splash. And I have a feeling that by the time you wake up tomorrow, half of what we just talked about will have a sequel we didn't see coming, because that is the tempo Claressa Shields has decided to run at, and that is the tempo the culture is going to run at right alongside her until August 15th arrives and the bell finally rings. So do the ritual with me. Tap that thumb. Drop the words in the comments. Ring that bell so the next spill lands on your feed the second it happens. Boost the room by sharing this with the one friend you know is going to have a strong opinion. And toss a tip if the spirit moves you. Every one of those tips keeps this pot brewing. I'll catch you on the next spill, cushion crew. Stay ready. Stay watching. Stay pouring.